Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ravinia Festival. Please note that the taking of photographs, including the use of camera phones and the use of audio or video equipment, is strictly prohibited. As a courtesy to the artist and your fellow patrons, please ensure that all mobile phones, pagers, and anything with an on-off switch have been silenced. We appreciate your consideration. Thank you for making it a great day at Ravinia.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. And I'm going to begin the afternoon with a passionate request for your indulgence, and that is, although I know you are very used to showing your appreciation for each singer after each song, for the sake of the unity of what we're trying to do today, I would respectfully ask you to conserve your applause until the end of each half of this afternoon's entertainment. So once at the interval and once at the end, and hopefully your gratitude, like wine, will be better expressed in one large portion. I nearly said tonight's recital, and in a sense it is about tonight's recital because it's all about night. But imagination is really at the center of the art song, the history of art song, the qualities of great art song performers and pianists, and, may I say, the quality of the imagination of the audience. This is a very, very crucial thing, that the audience should collaborate imaginatively in what is happening. After all, there's nothing here. There's no proscenium. There's no makeup. There's no costume. There's no plot, or at least obvious operatic plot. There's no producer to tell the singers how to react, and there's no hidden prompt on the stage to feed them their forgotten lines. This is very much a self-help organization. Art song stands on its own, and for a very good reason. The intensity of the writing for voice and for piano is something so extraordinarily meticulously arranged by the greatest composers that we need all our ears and attention on that interaction, not on accompanying visuals and other things that are supposed to make things less boring. In fact, if only we can give our full imaginative attention to what the performers are trying to do with a simple poem, sometimes a complicated poem, and how image by image, word by word, composers have responded, so that in between voice and piano there is an amazing type of colloquy, and the very lack of a person in the center with a stick directing the proceedings means that the responsibility for how the music moves in time and space and emotionally is invested in voice and piano. So we have the poem and we have the music, and it is powerful enough to turn day into night. Or at least, on this occasion, I sincerely hope that that is the case. Since Schubert composed his great song Nacht und Träume, Night and Dreams, song has been very much concerned with nocturnal evocations. Even before Schubert, there were composers who realized the power of evening evocations. For example, Mozart's immortal song Abendempfindung. But here we are going to bypass the age of Schubert and nevertheless remain in Schubert's city, Vienna. It's a Vienna of the dark and decadent and post-Mahlerian times. It's a Vienna where the music of Schoenberg, Albenberg, and Webern has attempted to overthrow the enormous romantic tradition that was the result of Mahler's harmonic experiments. It was a reaction. We are keeping the old ways. And no one was more determined in Vienna to compose in the old style, the lush style, the extravagant style, not 12-tone constructions. No one was more concerned to keep this than the Austrian composer Joseph Marx. Joseph Marx wrote many songs and lived until 1964. The song Nocturne is an evocation fit for those turn-of-the-century, extravagant, luscious, decadent times. Fragrant linden blossoms, a June night, the gentle resonance of youth, and the sense of loss and regret that such luscious beauty evokes. Mahler plus effulgence of that music we also find in the music of Erich Wolfgang Korngold. But we have an exceptional Viennese character and personality as next composer, Alma Mahler. And this is one of her 17 surviving songs. She was, of course, the wife of Gustav Mahler. She was a famous beauty, another pupil of the composer Zemlinsky. Zemlinsky was Joseph Marx's teacher, too. She was the lover of Oskar Kokoschka, the great painter. And after Mahler's death, she married the Bauhaus architect Walter Gropius, and then later married the great writer Franz Werfel. Such generosity of her favors did not go unremarked by posterity. I quote from Tom Lehrer, "While married to Gus, she met Gropius, and soon she was swinging with Walter. Gus died, and her teardrops were copious. She cried all the way to the altar." But he would work late at the Bauhaus and only came home now and then. She said, "What am I running, a chow house? It's time to change partners again." And indeed she did, this remarkable woman, who ended up in New York. The evocation is a mild summer night with a starless sky, two lovers in a dark wood embrace, and darkness is illuminated by the light of love. Can this affair last? Well, we must recognize Alma Mahler's honesty that she allows this music to end on a question mark.
Laue Sommernacht, am Himmel stand kein Stern. Im weiten Walde suchten wir uns tief im Dunkel, und wir fanden uns im weiten Walde in der Nacht der Sterne losen, hielten staunend uns im Arme. In der dunklen War nicht unser ganzes Leben nur ein Tappen, nur ein Suchen? Da in deiner Finsternis dein Licht.
Although we hear traces of French music in Joseph Marx, there's Debussyan patches in the piano interludes, France was in reality at this time so far away from Germany and Austria musically, another world. It was before the corporation attitude, the homogenization of culture made everything more or less the same. Ronaldo Hahn comes from Venezuela by birth, and in his teens, he was the adored, precocious prince of the Parisian salons and the lover of Marcel Proust. He is a master of the exquisite musical miniature of the Belle Époque. As a student of Massenet, everything was ultra-refined. Nowhere the heart-sleeved vulgarity and sobbing emotion of the Germans. Everything refined to fit in with the poetry of Paul Verlaine, because this is one of Grendahl Hahn's Chansons grises. The white moon shines as a vast and gentle calm seem to be descending on the woods. The heavens are aglow with stars. It is the exquisite hour. C'est l'heure exquise. We follow that song by Grendahl Hahn by a song by Maurice Ravel, a composer of whom Hahn did not exactly approve, too modern, too abrasive, too interested in new music, but he is certainly, Ravel, the greatest composer in our program so far. We must take an anthropomorphic turn as, thanks to the poetry of the prose poems of Jules Renard, Ravel draws a musical portrait of a cricket that would grace an intricate Walt Disney cartoon. The black insect returns home from his outing, winds up his tiny watch, and as if by a tiny chain on a creaking pulley, we hear this in the music, he lowers himself into the bowels of the earth. In the closing bars of the song, a nocturnal benediction. In the silent countryside, the poplars rise like fingers in the air, pointing to the moon.
L'acte noir revient
le promenade et répare avec soin le désordre de son domaine. D'abord il ratisse les étroites allées de sable. Il fait du brin de scie qu'il écarte au seuil de sa retraite. Il lime la racine de cette grenade propre à le harceler. Il se repose. Puis il remonte sa minuscule montre. A-t-il fini? Est-elle cassée? Il se repose encore un peu. Il rentre chez lui et ferme sa porte. Longtemps, il tourne sa clé dans la serrure délicate. Et il écoute, point d'alarme dehors. Mais il ne se trouve pas en sûreté. Et comme par une chaînette dont la poule est grasse, il descend jusqu'au fond de la terre. On n'entend plus rien. Dans la campagne muette, les peupliers se dressent comme des doigts en l'air et désignent la lune.
So far in these night evocations, no one has been asleep. But sleep is a hugely important part of nighttime activities. And the cruel contrast between the sleeping and the waking state is very clear, as it was right from the beginning in those dreamers in Schubert's Nacht und Träume who longed for dreams to return so they could have the comfort of that situation. So this second section is subtitled In Sleep a King, but Waking No Such Matter, the final line of Shakespeare's Sonnet 87. This brings us to the appearance of a great master of Lieder, Robert Schumann, and this is one of the many songs that he composed in 1840, and one of the few that were not directly addressed to his passionate love for Clara Wieck, who he was due to marry in September of that year. The poem is Hans Christian Andersen. A mother indulgently looks at her angelic son in the cradle. She dreams of his wonderful future. Little does she realize what he will grow up to be. See, the ravens are already gloating that one day they will feed on his criminal carcass as it hangs on the gibbet. The macabre touch is typical of a Hans Christian Andersen scenario. But it is also typical of how dreams, plans, a mother's dreams can all be horribly shaken by the events of reality.
erscheinen. Sie küsst ihn und hält ihn, sie hält sich kaum, vergessen der irdischen Schmerzen. Es schweift in der Zukunft ihr Hoffnungstraum, so träumen Mütter im Herzen. Der Rabbin es mit dir Sippschaft sein, kreischt draußen am Fenster die Reise. Dein Engel wird unser sein, der Räuber dient uns zur Speise. Der Räuber dient uns zur Speise.
And now a song by Gabriel Fauré, one of the very greatest of French song composers, whose early songs were composed in the 1860s, and his last songs, and we'll soon hear one of them, were composed in 1921. It's a vast and amazing career as a song composer. And this is a very early hit, Après un rêve. And it again is about the contrast between the happiness with which we dream about as we sleep, and on waking we realize that we have lost the very thing that has made us dream in the first place. I dreamt of you, and together we glimpsed unknown splendors, celestial fires. But then I woke up, and now I am imploring night to return, so I can recapture the radiance of my delusions.
Oh,
A composer older than Fauré, but absolutely at the center of French music in terms of its history, is Henri Duparc, who only composed 14 songs, but whose name is immortal in French history and music because of those songs and their importance. Most people know of his Baudelaire setting, L'Invitation au Voyage. But here we have the other Baudelaire setting, voluptuous and decadent, as befits the poetry of Baudelaire, the poet of Les Fleurs du Mal. It's all a massive, probably drug-induced fantasy, and we will have more to say of the harsh reality of slavery later in the program. In a previous life, I lived under vast colonnades, under blue skies and amidst the mighty music of the waves. Like an ancient emperor, I had naked slaves drenched in perfume, fanning my brow, their sole concern to fathom my secret grief. The sad reality of Baudelaire's life paints a better picture. But you can dream of a former life, and if you have a composer like Duparc to give it musical voice, the result is a masterpiece.
Que
And this is where the next section of serenades comes in. The serenade is an honored part of musical history. In song forms, some of the most wonderful songs are called stenchen in the lieder world. The stenchen Hark, Hark the Lark, a serenade to dawn from Shakespeare's Cymbeline, that was set by Schubert. And among his last songs, the Weltstab stenchen from Schwannengesang is one of the most famous melodies that Schubert ever wrote, if to be judged by the amount of times one hears it in piped music in shopping malls and parking lots. But the serenade can take many forms. We're going to hear 3 serenades of different kinds. And we've just heard an early song by Fauré. We're going to begin with another Fauré song among his very last. It's from a cycle called L'Horizon Chimérique, to the poet Jean de la Ville de la Miremont, a soldier who fell in the First World War. Diana, Silene, moon of beauteous metal, reflecting towards us on your desolate surface, in the eternal monotony of sidereal calm, my heart yearns for the peace of your nocturnal flame. For those of us who worship Fauré, it is the sparse music of this later period, deceptively sparse, musically incredibly rich. It's the music of this late period which is most unique and revelatory.
Frato ver nous parta face déserte, dans l'immortel ennui du calme sidéral, le regret d'un soleil dont nous pleurons la perte. And here is another song by Henri Duparc. Duparc and Fauré were close friends, of course. And it was Duparc who brought in a certain seriousness into French melody that incorporated that aspect of lieder which was its most valuable. He was still, however, capable of writing a charming melody like this one. It's a star that is serenaded this time, not the moon, Venus, the star of love. The infatuated singer of this serenade in quasi-Italian manner that never becomes entirely Italianate, asks the star to pour out its light into the chamber of the sleeping beloved, a girl of such purity that it seems that only starlight can make her dream of the rising
star of love. If I may say so, the gentlest of Gallic sexual innuendos.
Étoile dans la beauté, lui, comme un diamant dans la nuit. Regarde vers ma bien-aimée, dans la paupière si fermée.
It was with songs of such grace, refinement, and subtlety that by the 1880s, the French melody had established itself as a firm rival and a strong alternative to the otherwise all-pervasive world of German Lieder. But French and German choices were not the only ones. Each country, although Germany and Austria were initially in the lead, and in both senses in the lead, other countries followed suit. Spain, perhaps less so, Italy, so anchored in the operatic tradition. Russia, certainly, and England, and later American. And we carry on with an English song. And permit me a personal note. In the audience this afternoon is Rosalind Britton, a friend from my early years in London as a teenage music student. She grew up in a London household where Herbert Howells, the important English composer of the song we're going to hear, a song famous in England at least, was a constant and beloved visitor. I met Herbert Howells, then a venerable professor at the Royal College of Music, in Rosalind's home in South Kensington. I realized for the first time of my life that great music, great songs are composed by real people. This is a charming variant of the biblical story of King David, who in Walter de la Mare's poem calls for the music, he's a powerful man, of hundreds of harps to ease his melancholy. The music of these strumming harps, which we hear in the accompaniment, fails to soothe the king's restless and disturbed spirit. The king gets up out of bed, and we hear the harmony change. We hear that it changes as he rises. He walks in his garden by moonlight. In a cypress tree, he hears the song of a nightingale. Tell me, thou little bird that singest, who taught my grief to thee? But it is the sorrowful song of the nightingale that soothes the king's own depression. So this is also a serenade in its way, the failed serenade of hundreds of harps and the successful and touching serenade of a single nightingale calming the great royal presence.
King David was a sorrowful man. No cause for his sorrow had he, and he called for the music of 100 harps to ease his melancholy. The bird in no wise heeded, and the king in the cool of the moon again
Good evening, everyone. Before we begin the second half of tonight's concert, please take a moment to turn off or silence your cell phones and any other electronic devices that may disturb the performance. Thank you for your cooperation.
Atmospheric nocturnal evocations are one thing. We've had dreams, some overweeningly ambitious, some sad. But I think all of us here understand the dark night of the soul. A great tragedy or turning point in one's life, perhaps. Or simply waking up at 1 a.m. and feeling that desolate constriction, that everything in one's life seems to be unmanageable, unsolvable, impossibly difficult. A moment of great vulnerability, the loneliness of night. And that's where night as something dark and sinister establishes itself, as opposed to radiant and an opportunity for love. Well, these various things are very much incorporated, I think, in our program. But in the Lied itself, there are a lot of people who've consecrated their life, and in French song, to writing songs and who've had very sad lives. The early death at 31 of Franz Schubert, the greatest of all Lieder composers, cut off, and with so many tragic circumstances, quietly tragic, if not dramatically tragic, that led to that circumstance. The venereal disease that cut short the creative life of Robert Schumann and Hugo Wolf. The loneliness and sadness that permeated the life of Johannes Brahms. Being a fully committed composer, whether of songs or of any other kind, requires the kind of sacrifices where personal priorities very often are put to one side. And actually, when one sees the reaction of some of the composers to the horrors, you feel that there's a personal response, because in composing songs, unlike composing sonatas or symphonies, the composer can permit himself to be drawn into a moment of identification and sympathy with the great lyric, allowing that lyric to speak for him of things that he actually knew, and allowing him to write, or her, to write the music that it expresses. In Brahms's library at the Musikverein, we see the thumbnail sketches, the thumbnail markings on the music that he makes, as not on the music, on the poetry books, as he reads something that appeals to him. One almost feels, yes, I can set that because I understand it. That's why very often in the song world, we are drawn into a very personal part of the composer's life and background. We're going to begin with one of the great sufferers, and I'm not only talking about Heinrich Heine, the poet, who had terrible sufferings of his own in Paris for years, paralyzed on what he called the mattress grave, but of the composer Robert Schumann. In his cycle, Dichterliebe, we're going to hear one of the songs in that cycle. I wept in my dream that you were dead. I dreamt that you were leaving me, and I wept. I dreamt you still love me. And in great paradox, the poem says, I dreamt you still love me, and still my tears flow.
Ich hab im Traum geweinet. Mir wachte auf und die Träne floss noch von der Wange herab. Ich hab im Traum geweinet. Mir träumt, du verließest mich. Ich wachte auf und die weinte noch lange bitterlich. Ich hab im Traum geweinet, mir träumte, du wärst mir noch gut. Ich wachte auf und noch immer strömt meine Tränenflut.
The composer Johannes Brahms began as a protege of both Robert and Clara Schumann, but he soon showed his individuality, paying homage to Schumann as his mentor, but exploring different facets of music and definitely establishing his own individuality, above all in his songs. And he favored folk song settings and had a real penchant for folk poetry that came from obscure regions of Eastern Europe. This is such a poem. The Wends and the Sorbs puts me in mind of Bosnia, and the differences between the girl and the boy, which are so dreadful and so openly expressed in this nighttime meeting that they have, could well be a result of ethnic difference, the ethnic difference that provided the basis for that most terrible of wars in Sarajevo and Srebrenica. Do you suffer shame and sorrow on the account of what people are saying about me? The boy asks, as he leads her past the willow bushes where they have regularly made passionate love. Her reply, iron and steel can be melted down. Our love must endure forever. But with the end of the song, on a piano note that dies away rather than intense sense of winning the fight, we never know what happens in this relationship. Are her motives sincere? Does she intend to fight? Dare someone who comes from the wrong side of the tracks expect a woman who is better born to fight for him? And here, in this uncertainty of this folk poem from an indeterminate and unknown part of Eastern Europe, we have and can shine a light into the window of Brahms's own insecurities, born to a working-class family in Hamburg, and forever uncertain, despite the fact that he became Germany's most famous composer, that anybody would forget those wrong side of the track origins and fight to love him. And the result, of course, is that he never married and remained alone for all his life. Possible breakup of a relationship is not as terrible or as sad as a bereavement. We move into Russian song, very special and amazing area of the repertoire, and perhaps the greatest innovator, the greatest genius in terms of inventing something new that even spread into French music, the music of Mussorgsky, that the young Debussy found fascinating. Not only in such operas as Boris Godunov, but in songs. And we hear an early Mussorgsky song where a little star lost behind a gloomy cloud is compared to a maiden who has forsaken her beloved. The truth is that the cold earth has taken his fair maid, the star of his life, to her grave.
Oh
It is said that Mussorgsky was a great pianist, particularly in accompanying his songs. But there's one very great pianist, composer of magnificent piano concertos and pieces for piano, who was nevertheless such a cultivated and aware man as a composer that he wrote a series of marvelous songs, and I'm referring, of course, to Rachmaninoff. The death of a beloved is also at the heart of this impassioned song. The lights of evening are clear, the lights of evening are red. Dear one, where are you? It's a song thrown across the great divide. And the answer comes in the river of Lethe, which is the mythological river of death. We go from a song by a living English composer to a song by Jasmine Barnes, a living American composer, the youngest of all today's composers, a woman barely in her 30s. For her text, she uses the discovery of long-lost letters that had once been written by a person who was clearly the mistress of a house of slave owners. And this is that terrible moment when she writes that the slave family that she has known, that she has grown up with, that she has experienced as a family unit, for financial reasons now has to be sold up and separated to different owners. It is the voice of awakening conscience. It is the voice of awakening awareness of the full-scale horror in which she lives. It is a voice in which, although she says many, many, very many times has she prayed, that she is surrounded at the heart of her own family by people who are participating in great evil. Now, this type of awakening can take place at 3 p.m. or 6 a.m, but it is a dark night of the soul. When it takes a sliver of sunlight and sympathy into a situation to penetrate a mind until that mind is flooded with the realization of what's really happening. And it seems to me from her letters, it began with a disinclination not to have servants, separated, they inconvenient, cruel, monstrous, unthinkable. And then the whole system comes down with the horror of it all. And Jasmine Barnes writes 5 songs that are taken from these letters, and this is the last.
Father,
And we are going to now hear something that is about eroticism. The eroticism of nighttime, because not only is there sleep, and not only are there dreams and nightmares and gentle evocations, the real visits of Eros have traditionally taken place by night. We're going to begin with Richard Wagner, a great opera composer, without doubt, but he found time also to write some songs, the Wesendonck songs, as a result of an affair that he had in Switzerland with the poetess Mathilde Wesendonck. In it, Isolde and her Liebestod are prefigured and prophesied. Say, what wondrous dreams are these, embracing all my senses, dreams that penetrate the soul, bestowing their scent and then fading softly away on your breast and sinking into the grave. The harmonic experiments of Richard Wagner affected every French composer who went to Bayreuth, every other German composer. The use of harmony and the audacious scale of his innovations made Wagner one of the most important figures in the history of music. We don't have many songs by him, but this one is immortal. There was never more ardent a student of Richard Wagner than Hugo Wolf, a composer who had a short and brilliant career, writing songs with piano of such importance and such intensity that in the most unlikely manner he catapulted himself forward into the highest echelons and ranks of songwriting, to stand, in my opinion, right next to Schubert in terms of his achievements in welding music and poetry together in an unforgettable manner. He adopted the harmonic world of Wagner, but instead of endlessly big and imposing operas, he wrote shorter songs, none shorter than those in the Italian songbook, the Italienisches Liederbuch. We're going to hear just such a miniature of exquisite precision, where every little detail is planned. Two lovers have been estranged, not talking to each other, but there has been a reconciliation, and the musical depiction of that reconciliation is magical. Love's angels came in the night and have brought peace to my breast.
Auf einmal kam uns
we cross back from Vienna to Paris once again and find once again a completely different musical world being created contemporaneously with Valse by Claude Debussy, one of the greatest of all French composers, of course, and one of the greatest of all French song composers. The writer and friend of Debussy, Pierre Louis, fantasized about heterosexual love in ancient Greece. He invented a character named Bilitis, a young and beautiful girl who is so innocent that she has no real idea of what the motive of her suitors may be. One of these suitors has a dream, which he recounts to Bilitis. He told me, she says, and most of the song is the recounting of his words. He told me that last night I had a dream that your hair was round my neck and had joined us forever, our mouths touching, just as two laurels have only one root. Without limbs entwined, I sensed I was becoming you, and you were entering me like a dream. Or was that perhaps me entering you? Is anything here actually happening or not? This is eroticism disguised as ancient Greek pudeur, as if Bilitis could be engaged in lovemaking unaware of any guilt in these pre-Christian times. It is an ambiguity ideally suited to Debussy's evocative world of sound.
Il mi